Let me just do the acknowledgement of country. Thank you. So in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's spiritual connection to country, and in continuing ACU's commitment to reconciliation, it is customary to acknowledge country as we pass through. Today, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the First Peoples, the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways. We thank them for their continued custodianship. We acknowledge and celebrate the continuation of a living culture that has a unique role in this region and on all ACU campuses. We also acknowledge elders past and present and thank them for their wisdom and guidance as we walk in their footsteps. So I'd like to just hand over to Associate Professor Therese Dickey, IPI Deputy Director, to do the formalities.
Well, welcome everybody to the Brown Bag. Most of you have maybe already met Chloe online. Chloe joined us about 6 months ago and does some exciting research around currently media literacy skills. She also has some experience with doing research on autism in the past, but currently wants to focus more on media literacy and for example, has already started and is very quickly progressing a meta-analysis on the relationship between media literacy and well-being, and thus complements most of our research very nicely. Chloe has quant and qual skills, and I think understands herself as a mixed method researcher, but if any of us need expertise in qual, I believe Chloe is very happy to assist and support us. And without further ado, Chloe, I'm excited to hear your presentation and learn more about your research.
Thanks so much, Teresa and Ricky, and thanks everyone for coming along today. I just wanted to add my acknowledgement as well of the traditional custodians of the land that I'm presenting from today, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation here in Naarm, Melbourne. So I've been around ACU for a number of years now in various sections of the uni, and I felt very excited and privileged to be able to join IPI in July of this year. And I've enjoyed getting to know a number of you and your work over the last few months. I honestly think that you're an awesome bunch of people doing some really interesting research. And so I see the purpose of today's presentation as giving you an opportunity to get to know myself and my work a bit better. And as Teresa said, a particular focus of my work has been around media literacy. So I'm going to be unpacking some of the research I've done in that space today, as well as sharing some of my current research and future research plans. So I thought I'd start off by just explaining what I mean when I'm referring to the term media literacy. So this definition here is quite comprehensive. It refers to media literacy as a 21st century approach to education. At its core, it's about providing people with skills to be able to access, analyse, evaluate, participate, and create media in a variety of forms, from print to video to the internet. It builds an understanding of the role of media in society, as well as essential skills of inquiry and self-expression necessary for citizens of a democracy. And there are overlaps between other terms, such as digital literacy and information literacy. One of the distinctions, though, is digital literacy often focuses more on that access component of, what skills you need to be able to interact with media, whereas at its core, media literacy is really about that critical thinking and analysis component, which is what sets it apart from some of those other areas. Media literacy is an interdisciplinary, is often tackled from an interdisciplinary perspective. And there's different approaches depending upon what discipline and paradigm you're coming from. So one example of that is the protectionist versus the empowerment paradigms. So from a public health perspective, if you were looking at some of what they'd call those unhealthy industries, such as the gambling industry or the alcohol industry, they may be coming at it from more of a protectionist approach, where they're wanting young people to be able to critically analyse some of the media messages that are coming from those unhealthy industries in order to promote more healthy behaviours. Whereas from a communication and arts perspective, often the end goal is to promote active citizenship. And there was a recent National Australian survey conducting with adults, which found that adults with higher confidence in their media abilities were more likely to engage in more civic activities. So that may be from a more empowerment perspective, but of course, it's not just dichotomous. You could draw upon both approaches. So there's core concepts that underpin media literacy. So at its core, it's about asking these key questions around institutions who made this media and why did they make it, audiences, who was this media made for and how they're likely to respond to it, thinking about representations, how people, places or ideas are portrayed in the media and what the impacts of this are, considering the technologies that were used to produce, access and circulate the media and how the technology gathers personal data from users, the languages, so how the media communicates using images, sounds and written text, and what kinds of relationships are being developed through the distribution and use of the media. In terms of measurement of the construct, there is some diversity within the literature and how it's measured, and it's definitely an area where the field may benefit from some further refinement, but these are a few ways that it's typically measured. So one is confidence in media abilities. So this could be self-reported or indirect questioning, such as people reporting on their confidence in assisting others to perform particular media abilities. Sometimes it's a skill-based assessment, so assessing abilities to deconstruct an ad and or a different type of deconstruct any type of media really and unpack the different components of the media. And also attitudes towards media are measured and in relation to a particular conceptual framework that often underpins media literacy programs, and I'll come back to that in a later slide. So now a little bit about my own career journey that led me to this field of research. I started out my career as a primary school teacher. Young and idealistic, I really wanted to have a positive impact on children's lives through education. I quickly realised that full-time classroom teaching wasn't for me, but that I could have an impact, hopefully a positive impact on young people through research. And my PhD topic, I was particularly interested in the area of alcohol harm minimisation in education. And my supervisor, Professor Sandra Jones, introduced me to this area of media literacy education. So that's what started the journey. And from there, I've been fortunate to be able to work on other projects in this field. So one of my core areas of interest and expertise has been around the development, implementation and evaluation of school-based programs in particular. And I love being able to draw upon that education, a background in the development of these programs. So I'll share a bit more in detail about the PhD research, which feels like a long time ago now. So the focus was on developing an alcohol media literacy program. That was focused on upper primary school students, so year 5 and year 6 students. So one of the underpinning theories was inoculation theory, the idea that you want to equip young people with these skills before they actually engage in drinking to try and minimise harm and so there was a protectionist element there, but also an empowerment with developing their media literacy skills. The reason for the focus on upper primary school students is that although these advertisements aren't meant to appeal to children, they often do through the use of character endorsement or alcohol sponsorship of sport, through the use of appealing colours and characters. And so it's something that children are already exposed to in their everyday environment. As I mentioned, one of the theories that underpins a lot of media literacy programs is the message interpretation process model. So this model positions young people as active viewers of media, and it outlines the logic and the affect-based processes through which they interpret media messages. And the model suggests that individuals' affect-based processing can override their logic-based thinking, especially when they perceive the media to be desirable and attractive. So our program was aiming to strengthen adolescents' logic-based processing through teaching them to ask critical media literacy questions. So the program's development was informed by a systematic literature review. A couple of the key findings were there were a few US-based programs that were effective. However, there was a need to adapt those programs so that they were culturally relevant to an Australian landscape, which does look different to the US landscape in terms of exposure to those alcohol ads. We also found that there was a focus predominantly on print and TV ads, and there was a need to focus on the broader range of media to which young people are exposed to. So the program was underpinned by those core principles of media literacy that I mentioned earlier, and that message interpretation process model. So we piloted the program. It was a 10-lesson program with a couple of classes, and then refined the program and the measures used. And then from there, I implemented it in several schools and classes and evaluated it through an embedded mixed method design. So this included a quasi-experimental study with a waitlist control group, and there was a qualitative process evaluation and a content and discourse analysis of some of the students' artefacts. And we found there was positive results in a number of the quantitative measures. There was significantly higher media deconstruction skills as a result of the intervention, and measures of social norms related to drinking and alcohol expectancies. What was encouraging was that this program was used to rework the Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health District's drug and alcohol talking tactics prevention program for primary schools. It was a bit of a mouthful, but it was used to rework one of their school-based prevention programs. So the program was piloted in 2020 and 8 classes, so approximately 22 classes, 8 schools and 22 classes registered to receive that program in 2021. So the reach was delayed and impacted by COVID lockdowns, but yeah, it was great to have it in some of the schools in the area. So I then got to apply the skills that I had developed from that research on a postdoctoral project working with a team of psychology researchers. So this program was a social media literacy program focused on body image and wellbeing in early adolescence. And so what's unique about the social media landscape, is that it's distinct from traditional media in that young people aren't just passive consumers, but rather they become active consumers of media with the creation and sharing of content that coexists with commercially generated content. And in social media, that potential for peer interaction is extremely high, and people can control how they present themselves, especially with visual tools such as photos and videos, in which appearance is often the central focus. So because of this, on the internet and social networking environments, research highlights that there are often very high levels of exposure to idealized appearance images. So this is one of the underpinning frameworks here, the developmental social cultural framework, which just highlights the different factors that interact to make the social media landscape a particularly heightened experience for females in particular, young females in particular, but also young males in terms of those appearance pressures that combines with that adolescent period where those peers and social status becomes particularly important. So this was a 4-lesson program that we developed for Year 7 and Year 8 students, and it was evaluated through a cluster randomised controlled study with about 750 adolescents, where they completed 4 surveys across 1 year. And we asked them questions about their engagement with social media, which also included a number of measures related to body dissatisfaction and dietary restraint. We found that while the intervention showed benefits for girls in terms of dietary restraint and depressive symptoms at 6-month follow-up compared to control, it did appear less effective among boys. And although the effects were small, it's not unexpected in the context of a universal intervention that's delivered in a mainstream classroom. We also found that there was different profiles of social media users. So the young people who are more active users of appearance-focused media, such as Instagram and Snapchat, do tend to exhibit those higher body image concerns, probably not surprisingly. And it is a question of the chicken or the egg. Is it that the young people who are concerned about their body image are drawn to those platforms, or is it that those platforms draw attention to body image? And it's likely to be a bit of both. And from here, this is my more recent involvement in a program related to social media and media literacy. So this was a really fun project with the Butterfly Foundation, which is a key organisation that supports individuals impacted by body image and eating disorders. So they developed a whole of primary school program called Body Bright, and I developed curriculum for a particular strand that was focused on media literacy. So their resilient strand on being resilient to unhelpful media messages. So this was for all of primary school. So it was curriculum for Year 1 through to Year 6. And what was really exciting was that in the last year, 776 primary schools from across Australia registered to receive the program, with an estimated reach of about 139,000 students. So far they've done a small independent pilot evaluation of the program. They found that the lessons had high teacher acceptability, and that there were statistically significant improvements in body image and body appreciation for the Year 4 to Year 6 students after receiving a lesson from the program. So I'm keen to hear how they go with their full-scale evaluation. So that's an overview of where I have contributed to the development, implementation, and evaluation of media literacy programs and resources. So where to next in terms of this area? I'm really keen to collaborate with an industry partner from the outset and co-design a media literacy resource and program with them. As I found with that partnership with the Butterfly Foundation, I think partnering with industry from the outset offers a really great, really increases the opportunity to reach a larger number of people and to upscale the intervention. If you do know of community partners or industry partners that may be interested in media literacy, I'd love to hear from you. As Teresa mentioned, another area that I've worked in has been in autism inclusion. So I've moved around ACU a little bit, which has meant my research focus has shifted focus a few times. But within this area of autism inclusion, I have been able to have a media literacy component, which has looked at how autism is represented in the media. Because we know that media influence is particularly strong when a person's direct experience with the other is limited. So Rain Man in the 90s was one of the first representations of autism in film, and on one hand it was praised as representing the condition in film. On the other hand, it was criticised for its stereotypical representation. So one of our studies in this area was a systematic literature review of how autism is represented in all forms of media. And the second part of that review was what's the impact of that media on viewers' knowledge and understanding of autism. And so, we found that there have been some positive shifts in how it is represented, or atypical is a more recent representation. And one of the positives of this is that it is portrayed from the protagonist's perspective. So you actually get insight into the autistic person's thoughts and feelings. However, there still is a number of stereotypical representations, such as, the trope of the white male who is interested in trains, and there's still less representations of female autistic people, for example. And in terms of that second part of the study, the impact, it was somewhat inconclusive in terms of the impact on knowledge and understanding of autism. Some of the challenges are that it was often an experimental design where they view one episode and it wasn't able to factor in other aspects, such as their interactions, how many interactions they have with autistic people, or a more naturalistic setting where they're watching the whole series and their interactions outside of that. Another study that we did, this was one of our master's students, and she focused on that TV series, Atypical, and how autistic people perceived that portrayal of autism within on the show. And so the majority of that sample felt that it was an accurate portrayal, with some describing it as fundamentally inaccurate. But there were some mixed views regarding the potential impact of that portrayal and attitudes towards autism. And the main concern, as I have already referred to, was just that reinforcement of a stereotype and not being representative of the autism spectrum. So, where to next in terms of this area? Although I'm not actively pursuing research in the autism field moving forward, I think what I've taken from this research is just the power of being able to collaborate with organisations once again. So been able to work with a number of autism advocacy organisations such as Amaze and ICANN, and the use of expert advisory panels in this research as well. So that importance of really valuing lived experience and ensuring that perspective is included in all stages of the research, from the development to the evaluation. Okay, and that brings me to the current project that I'm working on that Teresa mentioned briefly at the start as well. And a number of you are already familiar with this because a number of IPI colleagues are collaborating on this project, which I'm really grateful for. So I'm currently working on a systematic review and meta-analysis that's exploring the relationship between media literacy and mental health and wellbeing. I think this is a good contribution to the field, which has often focused on specific areas, so media literacy in relation to alcohol, in relation to body image and eating disorders, but there hasn't been a review that's looked at media literacy in relation to mental health and wellbeing more broadly. And of course, also really connects well with IPI's focus on mental health and wellbeing. And I was also thinking about, when I was coming up with where do I go next, in relation to the situation, complication, question and answer. So one of my thoughts was that media literacy is a critical 21st century skill for young people that needs to be explicitly taught. However, one of the challenges is that schools are dealing with an already overcrowded curriculum. Media literacy isn't mandated in the school curriculum, so when it is taught, it's through the English curriculum, or it's through the health curriculum, or if you take media arts as a elective in your senior years. But there's inconsistency in the way it's taught in Australia. So my question was, how do we raise the profile of media literacy in schools? And I think one of the potential solutions is through advocating for it to be taught through the wellbeing curriculum, which is becoming a key focal point in schools. So hence I thought it'd be interesting to establish whether there is a clear relationship between media literacy and mental health and wellbeing. I imagine it may be a bit more nuanced, but it'll be helpful to tease out what some of the factors are that moderate that relationship. And so, yeah, we're well underway with the full text screening and have commenced the data extraction as well. So I'm looking forward to completing this study, and it will be quite critical as well in informing what resources and programs I might pilot next in the media literacy space based on the findings. So to sum up, though media literacy has been a key focus of my work, I really connect with IPPI's broader vision of wanting to address critical educational and psychosocial issues. I love working collaboratively, so would love to hear from you if there are projects where I may be able to add value. As I mentioned, I'm particularly interested in that area of developing, implementing and evaluating resources and programs, particularly school-based, and particularly have a strong value around being able to collaborate with industry and community partners, because I think that's a great way to have that research impact when they're involved from the outset. And like a lot of my IPPI colleagues, I also enjoy doing systematic reviews and meta-analyses, and I know that there's a number of experts in that area here at IPPI. And as Teresa mentioned, I'm a mixed methods researcher, and in more recent years have taken a stronger qualitative focus. So yeah, thank you everyone, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Round of applause, perhaps. Thank you. Oh, it's calling it. I'm going to score Rhonda later. All righty. Okay, any questions from the floor here? Anybody from online either? Oh yes, thanks, Sam.
Yeah, really great presentation. I really enjoyed that. I'm just wondering, with the media literacy, what's the age group that you're targeting in schools? I mean, I missed it.
So Sam was talking about, in terms of your media literacy work, what's the age group that you're targeting? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Most of my work so far has focused on children and adolescents, but for that systematic review, we are including all age groups. Yeah, it does have relevance to, there are some interesting work in the adult space as well.
Yeah, I'm mostly, so the population I group work with usually 8 to 12 years of age. And I just think that media literacy, we all can probably benefit from media literacy at some point, even adults, even me, I think. Do you have plans to kind of roll this out outside of school-based, as kind of just putting this resources on the internet and then letting people take your, I guess, program that way? Have you thought about implementing it that way?
So was there two questions there? One around focusing on adults as well, and then also how the resource is disseminated. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for that first part, yeah, certainly open to developing resources for adults as well. And I think that's why it'll be interesting to see what the findings are from this review and whether there is a gap in that area. Yeah, in terms of that second question of how it's disseminated, yeah, I think that's really important. It's media literacy, as you can imagine, it's rapidly changing because there's always new technology being introduced. And so one of the challenges is, how do we ensure that these programs and resources do remain relevant and up to date? And I think online is a good way to go so that they can be easily updated as needed. So yeah, I think that is a good way to go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe. Anybody else?
Um,
Oh, yep. Go, Danling.
Chloe, I'm quite interested in the qualitative method you use with the primary school children, since like they have probably limited literacy. So I was curious what you did exactly with them. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, with that primary school program, the qualitative component was actually with teachers. So we were finding out what the observing teachers' thoughts of the program were. And the other qualitative component was we collected the student work samples. So the program culminated in the students having to create a counter advertisement. And we did a content analysis of the actual artifact. But I can speak to other qualitative studies that I have done with children. So different area, but I have done a qualitative study with primary schools children from refugee backgrounds, looking at their experiences of a homework support program. And one of the ways we collected data from them was through an activity-based focus group. So yeah, the thing I like about, any sort of qualitative research though, but using creative methods. So the activity-based focus group started with a brainstorming activity where we got them to write pictures and draw words related to the questions. So the idea was that gave them a bit of thinking time and provided a couple of avenues through which they could record that data. And then from there, we encouraged them to share what they had recorded and prompted them with further questions. But you're right, I think the challenge with qualitative data with children and adolescents is collecting that rich data. Sometimes when I've done interviews with adolescents, it has felt like, it's been a challenge to try and get that rich data. But I think there is a number of strategies you can use, and just trying to build that rapport with them from the outset, and those kinds of strategies as well, the environment you're setting up. But happy to chat more about that if there's projects that you're looking at.
Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Stanley. Any other questions here? Anybody online? Well, I think you've wowed them, Chloe, with all the amazing stuff that you've done. But I think, we are looking forward to further collaborations. And, as I said, I know you've been here 6 months already, but, welcome to IPI. And I'm sure the academics here and staff are looking forward, as well as those online, to to collaborating on these most excellent projects now and into the future.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And thanks for your time. All right. See you around. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thank you.